I am no stranger to a gross out horror movie. In fact, here on my channel I have watched The Greasy Strangler from 2016 and I've watched Septic Man from 2014. So how do you outdo yourself when you've already watched a man turn into literal shit and seen a woman projectile out of every orifice of her body at the same time before keeling over and dying? Well, maybe today's movie is the answer to this, as I'm about to watch a bunch of homeless people melt into neon-coloured slime. But if you don't know anything about street trash from 1987, let me quickly fill you in. In Brooklyn, New York, a bad batch of old wine is being sold to homeless people and causing whoever drinks it to melt. Cop Bill is determined to uncover the reason behind the mysterious deaths, but first must contend with a sociopathic Vietnam vet named Bronson, who is using some of these homeless people for his personal army. If you're new here, I go by Hordes and I talk about all things horror here on my channel on Mondays and Fridays, but as always when it comes to watching movies for the first time, I am now going to go and watch Street Trash from 1987 off camera, so that way if you too still want to watch this movie, nothing will be spoilt for you, because nobody wants to watch a movie you've just watched somebody else watch from start to finish. And apparently, this one's gonna get gross. You like me? This may be one of the weirdest movies that I have ever watched, and I honestly have no idea what the hell I just watched, apart from the fact that the amount of sexual assault in this just gives me major ick. Considering that this was sold to me as a body melt horror, I basically got everything but that as the primary plot. And what actually happens in this movie is it feels more like a drama that revolves around a bunch of homeless people that happen to live in a junkyard that do incredibly questionable things to living and dead people, and at one point we're playing American football with a severed dick. Like, so much happens, but nothing also happens, because this movie is basically like 4, 5, 6 different storylines that in no way really link together. They're just there because they can be.
I'm just gonna get the diagram.
It feels like Street Trash is being gross and weird just for the sake of being gross and weird. You're like, it can, so it's doing it. So to compare it to other movies, let's take like Meet the Feebles by Peter Jackson, or Brain Dead by Peter Jackson, or anything by John Waters. All of these movies I have seen and I really enjoy. All of them that use like gross out techniques for this, like for the actual plot, and they're there for a reason. But I can't say the same about Street Trash, because it doesn't feel like there's actually a reason for these things being there, besides they went, you know what, let's try and push as many buttons as we can possibly push and feel like we're punching down on people at the same time, and it's just, it kind of feels cruel, if I'm being honest. Yeah, it's just, its plot's just not for me. It feels like they took the original 15-minute short that they made in 1984, took all the material in that, and then thought, how do we pad this out into a full hour and 40-minute movie, which I got very bored towards the end of, and they threw basically everything at it and called it a day. Like, the ending is so abrupt that I was like, is this actually the ending? Like, I get that there's the little snippets that go on throughout the credits, but it just felt so abrupt, and none of the plot feels like it goes together. Like, the random scene in the grocery store, for example, well, like, that just felt like filler. Like, great, love the character that is involved in that scene. He's probably the only character I liked in the entire movie, but it just felt so, like, there because it could be, and you've got issues when I can watch an hour and 40 long minute movie and not be able to name a single one of your characters. Like, I couldn't care less about anybody because we spent so little time with anybody, and when we did, the audio is kind of mumbly, so you can't always hear what everybody is saying. I really like the melty death scenes though. I really like them. There's like 2 in the first 15 minutes, then an hour of nothing, and then you get 3 in under 5 minutes, and then the movie sort of runs hell for leather into the finale section, and then you get this cool scene with an exploding gas canister. So it's good to say that at least the selling point of this movie to me, which was the melty deaths, which looked like if you took like melted wax crayons, jello, and acrylic paint and mixed them all together in a wondrous neon rainbow. That's what the deaths look like in this movie, and they are great. But it's not enough, because once you take those out of this movie, it is purely an exploitation movie, and I can't get behind that.
I need more.
So let's compare it to 2 other gross out movies that I've watched here on my channel. I would rather watch Septic Man over Street Trash, and that is saying something, because while Septic Man is weird and it's gross, it doesn't feel mean-spirited. Like, you can punch down on people and it still be funny. South Park is proof of this, and they've been doing it for years. Like, if everybody's the butt of the joke, nobody can be offended. But for that, you need it to be at least funny. And that is why I would also rather watch The Greasy Strangler over this, because if you've not got the humour behind it, it's just a weird, gross out movie that makes your audience feel uncomfortable. And Greasy Strangler, while it makes you feel incredibly uncomfortable when watching it, it's also really funny. So it's found that fine line and it walks it really well. So did I find Street Trash funny? Not in the slightest. And I think that, again, this is a big issue with this movie for me personally. Like, if a horror comedy isn't funny, it's missed the mark.
Target missed.
I will say that comedy and horror are both incredibly subjective, and while I didn't personally find this movie funny, doesn't mean that I can't see why somebody else would find this funny. Now, I normally save my half-star ratings for movies that I find offensive in some way, and while Street Trash from 1987 is incredibly questionable, like, really questionable at times, doesn't mean that I think it deserves a half-star rating, because it's actually got a couple of good things going for it. So in the end, I'm actually going to give this movie a 1.5 out of 5 stars, because the body melt sequences are so good. They are the reason that I watched this movie. So seeing that these were actually really effective, and they're gory and colourful, and I love them. Like, I just want more of them and less of the exploitation plot. And the other thing that I really liked in this is there's some really good Steadicam footage, which was actually done by the director, J. Michael Muro. So that is kind of worth watching the movie for as well, particularly because this is seen in the end sequence. It's just not for me though, this movie, and yeah. Am I going to watch it again? No, sadly not. So there you have it, my initial thoughts and my review for my first time watching Street Trash from 1987. If you've also seen this movie, I would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comments section down below. Especially if you have an opinion that differs from mine, I'm always open to hearing why people love movies that I personally dislike. If you want to know every single horror movie that I watch, you can also find me over on Instagram and Letterboxd at HordesOfHorror, and I will be back on Friday with another solo movie review. This time it's a surrealist movie from Belgium, and I'm kind of excited about this one because it looks like nothing that I have ever seen before. So until next time, bye!